we will put Daniel in the spotlight tonight. Now, he's famously known for being the central technology officer at Picnic, the world's fastest growing online supermarket, some people say. Previously, he was the director of research and development of Fredhopper and led engineering teams both in Amsterdam and Sofia. And of course, Daniel holds a PhD in computer science and MBA. So for those who want to pursue an academic career, he's a guy you should look up to. Now, our moderator for the Fireside chat is Nathalie. Nathalie is a creative and entrepreneurial coach for large organizations and corporations. She started her career working in tech, you know, the whole woman in tech. Well, she's the perfect example. She adopts the right mindset, skills, and tools, and helps teams through a variety of methodologies. She makes sure to build better products and better services. So please give a round of applause to Daniel and Nathalie.
And Daniel, for you, when was the last time you were actually at uni, at a big hall like this?
So let's see how we do it. Okay, cool. I'm pretty excited to be here. To be frank, I'm pretty often at a university. So I finished my PhD not 20 years back, but in 2015, so it's a little bit fresher. But what we are doing is we are dropping by at a university, well, different kind of universities, simply to see a little bit what is latest research going on, and also to just share a little bit the Picnic story and to make people excited about Picnic.
Great. So today's theme of the event is innovation in a digital age. And when I think about innovation, is that there's basically not one right answer. So I'm very interested to hear about what it means to you and how you have used that to build up Picnic.
Cool. To be frank, the term innovation has been pretty much hyped over the last, I don't know, 5, 7, 10 years. And we have a little bit in Picnic, we find the term a little bit challenging. For the simple reason is, if you have innovation teams or innovation quarters, or if somebody works in innovation, then everybody wants to work in innovation. Nobody says, well, you know, I find it super cool to work not on innovation. So that's the reason why actually innovation for us is more a cultural topic, where you simply encourage everybody to come up with new ideas, to take some risks, to take experiments, and to work on topics that actually bring the company a step further. So innovation for us means if tomorrow looks better than today, if next week looks better than this week, then we are doing something that is certainly innovating and that is certainly evolving the business to a better level. And that's basically what it means in our context.
Thanks. And if you look at the start in the beginning of Picnic, and you talk about the importance of culture and encouraging people to come up with ideas on a continuous basis, what does that look like in like a day-to-day life in the company?
So that's actually a pretty interesting question, because it is pretty easy to be innovative, to take risks when you're small. For the very simple reason, you don't have anything to lose. So there's nothing before, you take a couple of risks. If it doesn't work out, well, then you try to start another company, or you do something else. If it works, great. But if you grow a little bit further, then it becomes much harder to take actually risks. So if you look to a company like Google or Facebook or Uber or Snap, then in those companies, which are still pretty much innovation driven, it becomes seriously hard to actually run innovation as a kind of a day-by-day processes. And that's also what we have been doing. And the biggest thing in this, let's say the biggest cultural component, is to actually encourage your employees, or everybody who's part of the team, to take risks. Because actually, the only thing how you can learn, the only thing how you can innovate is running experiments, and not actually running experiments where you know already is that the experiment will succeed, but actually accepting that half of the experiments don't succeed. So therefore we have kind of a risk, a culture where we encourage everybody to take controlled risks. So controlled risks means basically you run an experiment, the experiment has a chance to succeed, and if it succeeds, then it's good. If it doesn't succeed, we have learned something, what we shouldn't do in the future, and that's basically what we do every week. So every week we are running between 10 and 15 experiments, and roughly half of them go really well, and the other half simply not.
Do you have an example of one that went really wrong?
That's always the most interesting question. So let me start with maybe another. Let me start with a good example, and then we go to an example where we really failed massively. So let me give you a very simple example of something where we run an experiment. We got really surprised at how well it was working. So when we start Picnic in 2015, then actually we thought a bit, what is the kind of the MVP? What is the smallest scope to get the service live? And at this point in time, well, it was clear you need to have an app. The app needs to work roughly, reasonably well. And the kind of the backend systems were, to a large extent, still manual, paper-based or spreadsheet-based. The next step is, and at this point in time, we actually thought about a feature. If you actually place an order, and if you have forgotten something, then you would like to add a product to your order. That is something which was a super small feature in the beginning. A few customers have asked for, but not a lot of customers. And we made a couple of experiments, and we did not even see many customers were really asking for this. And then at some point we launched this just 2 or 3 months back, and the entire industry, so Immerse and many more people got super excited about this kind of new feature that we launched that we just had on the back burner. So that's a kind of an experiment that really worked out well. Experiments that didn't work out so well are, for instance, experiments where we tried something on our logistics concept. So we tried, for instance, something as a first experiment as a return logistic. Very simple thing. We have a lot of cars. So by now we have 800 cars. And our CFO simply at some point came to us and said, guys, you have 800 cars, but you use the cars only 50%. You go full to a customer, you go empty back. So half of the time, the car is simply empty. That's not pretty cool. So therefore, we thought a bit about what can we do. And then we looked a bit in the market and in the industry, and we saw that there is actually an industry which is organized exactly the reverse of what we do. We bring something from our warehouse to a customer. While, for instance, there is an industry called return logistics, which takes stuff from customers back to retailers. Think about your last shopping trip at Zalando. At Zalando, everybody of you orders 5 pairs of jeans or 5 dresses and sends 4 back. Everybody is doing this. So the biggest issue for a company like Zalando or Wekamp is that they have a huge return flow of products. So therefore, this is something what we are now organizing ourselves, where we take stuff back from Zalando, etc. However, in order to test this, we didn't start with a big retailer like Zalando or Wekamp. We started actually with books, with a small library in Almere. It was very well designed as a kind of an experiment, but what we realized is nearly nobody reads these days, and libraries are not that sexy actually, and are not so connected to our mobile service. So we learned a bit some stuff, but obviously that is not something what we would call a kind of a successful experiment. When we launched it for Zalando and for Wekamp, it became a pretty successful experiment afterwards.
Thanks. So let's run a little experiment over here. How many of you guys actually know Picnic? Okay, that's about 75%, I would say. How many have actually ordered things with Picnic? I can really not, like, that's less than 8%. What is, if you guys want to speak up, what is one of the reasons why you have not ordered with Picnic? I'm going to throw, yeah, I was looking forward to throw this.
Does this work? Yes. Well, I remember one time back, like 1-2 months ago, we tried to order from Picnic from our apartment, but when we were logging in or whatever, there was like this message saying that there were not enough cars, or they were at the top of the clients that they could take at the moment, so we had to wait. So ever since that, we haven't tried again. So
yeah. Okay. So, yes. So let me give you a little bit of some insight on what is happening here. So basically, there are 2 reasons why customers are maybe not stop ordering. One thing is, indeed, you want to order and you don't have a kind of a slot for the next day. So that's pretty disappointing. The other thing is, you're registering for the service and you have to wait pretty long. Both are actually going down to the same root cause. And the root cause is, you need to build up physical capacity. So if you think about a service like, for instance, Facebook, if Facebook has twice as many customers or twice as many users, then basically they just need to launch twice as many servers. And that is pretty easy. if we actually want to serve twice as many customers, what we need to do is we need to have twice as many people in a warehouse, twice as many drivers, twice as many cars, twice as many scanners, twice as many people in customer service, etc. So there is a lot of kind of constraints that we need to actually align in order to grow. And we're growing every week between 3 and 5%. And the real challenge that such a business has is to grow every aspect of the supply chain equally. So in the beginning, for instance, the biggest challenge that we had is to buy enough cars. So we have now 800 cars, but these are special cars, and there's quite a bit of manufacturing that we do ourselves. So we started with one car manufacturer. And at some point, the car manufacturer simply told us, guys, you're growing too fast. I cannot produce so many cars as you need them. So then we went to a second car manufacturer. And the second car manufacturer also reached its limit. So that is something where you actually really need to align all the kind of different capacity limits. And that is indeed something not very nice, but that is a little bit kind of a challenge that such a hybrid business model, where you have physical components and digital components, has to live with it. Yeah. Anybody else, maybe other interesting feedback or reasons?
My Dutch level is not that good, and so your website is full of Dutch. So this might be one of the reasons. I mean, I'm not going to shopping on your website because I can go to supermarket easily on my way home from the office.
That's it. Let me entangle this. So there are basically two things or two arguments that you bring. So the site or the app itself is just in English. That's absolutely just in Dutch. Absolutely true. And the second thing is, on your way home, you actually have a supermarket. So one very interesting insight that we learned over time is, it doesn't matter how far you're living from an actual physical supermarket in order to order online groceries. So we have actually 75 customers that are living over an Albert or Jumbo that are ordering regularly with us. Which is pretty funny, because you're going you're stopping in front of a supermarket and bring it to the customer who lives above the supermarket. So this is not the biggest hurdle. But indeed, the app is purely in Dutch. To be very frank, we have currently still 75,000 people on the waiting list. So our focus or priority now is basically ramping up capacity. And at some point, we will simply do the translation.
That's fine, but I'm just trying to understand. I mean, except the electronic car, what is your biggest selling point? Are you cheaper than supermarket, or you just give like a better time range compared to the traditional supermarket?
So let me go maybe one step back. It's a very good question. Let me go one step back how we came up with the business concept itself. So we have been for some time in e-commerce and basically worked with around 500 different retailers. And retailers of all kind of verticals, so electronic retailers, fashion retailers, etc. And what we observed is that in the non-food world, so that means buying books, buying fashion, buying electronics, already 20%, 30%, 40%, 50% of the entire retail market is online. So every, let's say 50% of everything what is sold in electronics is sold online. If you look to food, only 1 or 2% has been online at this point in time. So we started actually trying to understand, why is nobody buying food online while everybody feels comfortable to buy non-food online? So we identified basically 3 reasons, and that's maybe interesting to understand. So the first thing is, you have to pay for the deliveries. So if you order something, you have delivery fees. Nobody likes this. And the same has happened also in fashion. So for instance, if you go to Zalando, has started with first as a service where you had to pay for deliveries. Later, they dropped the delivery fees, and then actually Zalando really took off. So now fashion is 20 or 30%. The second thing is, nobody wants to wait. So for instance, if you order a dress or if you order books, then it's okay if somebody tells you we will deliver in the morning or afternoon or evening. If you order food, and if somebody tells you we will deliver between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m., then this is not good enough, because 4 p.m. you can use it for dinner, 8 p.m. you can't. So obviously you need much smaller delivery windows. And the third one is, everybody was basically copying the app that worked pretty well for non-food, also in the food world. But if you shop for 30 items in food, the app needs to look very, very different than compared to if you go for electronics, where you typically shop for 3 items. So these have been the 3 pillars around which we build the kind of the business proposition. And the business proposition is lowest price, free delivery. So basically you pay you don't pay in a supermarket more, and we deliver for free, which takes all the obstacles away in order to that you had in the past to actually make shopping online. And that basically was the starting point of Picnic.
Yeah, thanks. But just one more question. I mean, we have like quite some big supermarket like Abraham and Yumbo. But
Sure.
I guess, I mean, as you said, now they probably still charge the delivery fee, and probably, I mean, their e-commerce is not that good. Abraham is a little bit better, but probably they're still not doing as good as you are doing. But just in case there's a traditional supermarket, they extend their e-commerce channels. And what is your solution to deal with them? Because they might be your one of the biggest competitions.
So actually the interesting thing is what we're doing with Picnic is basically, from a consumer side, an online supermarket. So this is online food retail. What happens in the business itself, it is a logistics company. So basically everything is around logistics and tech. And what happens, and in the same way also for Albert and Jumbo and other companies. But in a company like Albert or Jumbo, where you do 95, 97, 98% still with physical retail, you will optimize all your tech, optimize all your supply chain, delivering to around the delivery proposition to a physical supermarket, not to the online proposition. So it will take time there until somebody optimizes also the supply chain to deliver in an efficient way to online customers. And that will happen. But that is still some time away. Currently, there's significantly more demand in the markets that anybody could actually fulfill. So if now, today, everybody would stop, would reduce the prices or would say everybody delivers without delivery fees, there would be significantly more demand that anybody of the existing retailers could fulfill. So it's a pretty interesting market to be in.
How much do we have left? 1 minute. There go my personal question time. If I looked, if I go back to a previous point that you made, that you were growing at a rate of 3 to 5% per week. I mean, that is for a relatively young company. Those are numbers to dream of. What in there is, in terms of not the logistics side, but in terms of managing the team, what are the issues that you're running into?
So if you grow, let's say week over week between 3 and 5%, that means on a yearly basis you do every year kind of a 10x. The interesting thing what happens in such an environment is that every 6 to 12 months, the company is completely different. The company reinvents themselves in a very substantial way. So that means organization, process, everything is fundamentally different compared to a year ago, and will be in a year's time again completely different. So the challenges that you have is basically how do you evolve both your organization, your processes, but also the people that are with you, that your founding team, everybody has been since the early days there, that they are still finding themselves also reflected if the company is bigger. So we started at the company when we have been just 5 people around the table. So we launched in 2015 when we have been 30. Now we are 3,500. So obviously things are drastically changing. And end of the year, we are maybe 5,000, and end of next year, maybe 7,000 or 8,000. So with this kind of numbers, obviously everything is massively changing. And the key challenge, or the key, let's say, our interesting challenge is that to evolve everybody and to develop everybody also on a personal side, to find themselves also happy in a bigger organization.
And for you, to stay happy in an organization and to lead it, be able to lead a company like this, who inspires you, or how do you keep on growing yourself?
Well, probably the most interesting thing is I've never done something of this size of what we are now doing here in Picnic. So this is a learning journey for everybody. We are pretty close to a similar company, so we are pretty close to let's say to the Facebook and Uber and Snap, etc. So let's say the research and the development teams of those companies which have been going through a similar growth curve. So it's the Fair team, it's the ATG team, etc. So that's a kind of inspiration. We are pretty close also to the Amazon team, and that is basically the kind of inspiration that we take. What is interesting is if you grow so fast in an industry and in a way that nobody has been doing this in this form, you cannot learn or you cannot copy too much. So you can get inspiration left and right, but basically you have to find your own way of working. And that's probably the most challenging, but also the most interesting part of such a business.
Thank you, Nathalie and Daniel. Please give them a round of applause.